Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. He's Chris Biderman. He is beating the Heat currently in Sacramento. It is beat the Heat season, right? We're beating Heat.
I was going to say, is that the first one of 2024?
Yeah, I think it is. I definitely think it is. Congratulations, everybody. We've made it. Welcome to Beat the Heat season 2024. That is what Chris and I are both doing right here on this very podcast. Hopefully you are doing the same.
The air conditioner literally just kicked on as you said that.
Bienvenidos, AC. Welcome back. Speaking of beating the Heat, that's something the Nuggets did last year in the NBA Finals. That's something the Nuggets did not do this year, though, against our Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves beat the Nuggets in 7 games, including a Game 7 win in Denver, to move on to the Western Conference Finals. Just really, really thrilled for our Wolves. And, of course, thrilled for our guys over at Lamb Chops. They have partnered with the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. They created a sick-ass line for the Timberwolves. It was sold exclusively in the team store. And there's stuff you can buy from them. And you can get that at sglambchops.com. Promo code Candlestick20. Get 20% off your order today. Chris, you picked the Nuggets to win that series. How does that taste?
It's fine. It was really just kind of a reverse jinx ploy to get Minnesota over the hump.
You did it.
I mean, honestly, though.
Well done by you.
Yeah, we did it. Really, just a really impressive game. Game 7, and Anthony Edwards didn't quite have the shot, but Naz Reid, 6th man of the year, proving his value, why he won it, and it was a really impressive win. And Denver, I thought, just wasn't as deep, didn't have the horses, didn't have as many guys off the bench or any guys off the bench really contributing. And even their secondary guys in the starting lineup didn't contribute a whole lot in Game 7. Minnesota did. That's why they're moving on. So congrats to the Wolves and all of our homies over there who have been rocking with Lamb Chops, and we're excited for everybody.
Lamb Chops provides high quality clothing. It's super comfortable. It looks super dope. They got their spring line out right now. Go check that out. I think they still have some pieces left from their winter line as well. You can check those out at sglambchops.com. Promo code Candlestick20 to get 20% off your order today. Lamb Chops, join the herd. We are also sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy sports. Super easy. You pick 2 to 6 players. You pick more or less on their stat projections, and you watch the winnings pile up. I have not made an entry. Tonight is Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I have not made an entry yet, but I'm thinking of putting Tyrese Halliburton and picking less than on all of his projections for the entire series. You can only pick them once for each game, but I don't feel great about Halliburton in this series.
Yeah, I think that's fair. In going with the theme from 49ers OTAs, I think I would have taken the more than on Ricky Pearsall targets from Brock Purdy on the practice field. Haven't seen any exact numbers yet. And obviously we're recording this after the first open OTAs. So I would have gone more than on Pearsall targets and Isaac Guerrero reps with the first team. I probably would have gone more than time. Given the number of reps he needs as a rookie and the fact that Christian McCaffrey is not participating in OTAs as of yet, which we will talk about because there are some interesting things regarding Christian McCaffrey that we can dive into.
So there's no 49ers OTAs squares that you can pick for your entry, but there's WNBA, MLB, NBA, NHL, soccer. You can pick WNBA and NBA first halves. You can pick NBA series. You got MLB live entries. League of Legends? Sure. First quarters of the NBA NHL series. More gaming stuff. There's Prize Pick specials, tennis, Korean baseball organization, NFL season picks, darts. All of those can be included in your entries at prizepicks.com/candlestick. Use promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/candlestick. Promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Let's dive into 49ers OTAs. All right, the first couple days of OTAs are over. We're recording this Tuesday afternoon. Shout out to everybody who's hanging out with us live on YouTube right now, youtube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles Podcast, or search Candlestick Chronicles at YouTube and subscribe. Thumbs up any videos you watch. We would appreciate that immensely. No shocker, Chris, that Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings were not in attendance, given their current contract situations. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see... I'm guessing we'll see Jennings on the field even if he doesn't get an extension done, but I'd be shocked if we see Brandon Ayuk on the field without a long-term deal.
Yeah, I would say, this is going to be something with Brandon Ayuk, and we've said it all along that it's likely going to be something that drags into the summer, and whether or not he shows up to the mandatory session in June, which is, only a few weeks away now, would sort of indicate what the temperature is of those talks, right? Like there have been contract discussions where guys have not shown up to 49ers mandatory sessions, and that's sort of made it seem like the sides are far apart. And then you've had others where, guys will show up. They might not participate in terms of 11 on 11 drills, but they'll be there and they'll be running around doing some things. And usually that indicates that, the sides are talking, you have face-to-face meetings happening in the building, things like that. So I think we'll know a little bit more in terms of the contract status for Brandon Ayuk later on. I'm not expecting anything to get done anytime soon. I think, there's been reporting out there saying that they're not close. It's like, yeah, I think it's silly to think they would be close in May. Like if they're not close in late July, then I think that's far more notable. And in terms of Juwan Jennings, I mean, he does not have the same amount of leverage as Brandon Ayuk does. Right. Like Juwan Jennings is a third wide receiver. He had a very nice Super Bowl. He can't negotiate with another team. He has his RFA tender to sign. So, there's little that he can do I think that there's little that he can do to entice the 49ers to be like, oh yeah, here's a big contract. Right. There's other more pressing contracts to get done too.
Yeah, I think for Juwan Jennings, the deal the 49ers probably have on the table for Juwan Jennings, this would be my guess anyways, is the kind of deal that if he signed it and that deal got reported, we would be like, wow, that's a really nice contract for the 49ers to have Juwan Jennings under. It's like if 3 years and $21 million or something insane like that, right? Like super, super low dollar amount. So for Jennings, it's just a matter of, okay, these are optional workouts, and if he can hang out and make the 49ers add a few more million to that deal, then great. If not, he'll play on his 1-year tender and try unrestricted free agency next year. I'm not super moved by either player not being there, and I'm not moved at all by the Brandon Ayuk contract talks are far apart reports. And
me neither. And with Jennings, it's like, all right, if you don't want to show up, then you're just going to allow Ricky Pearsall to get more reps. And Kyle Shanahan would love Ricky Pearsall to get as many reps as possible. Because Pearsall is clearly a first-round pick, a far more talented player, and somebody the 49ers have long-term hopes for. Probably more so than Jennings, who the 49ers likely view as there's a reasonable chance that this is his last year with the team too.
Juwan Jennings, okay, I understand. Look, this is not a I don't know ball situation. Not that I do, but work with me. I understand what he does for them as a blocker, just providing an edge in the receiving core, getting in opponents' faces. His third down prowess is well documented. We have, the nickname Jennings on third down, and there's there's a lot of value there to be sure. Like, I don't want to undervalue what Juwan Jennings is doing, but at the same time, that's a position where production does matter. And you're looking at a player that, first of all, I was stunned when I noticed that he caught 19 passes for 265 yards and 1 touchdown last year. If you had asked me that just offhand, how many catches did Juwan Jennings have last year? I'd have been like, I don't know, 40. Like, and that's just kind of where my head would have landed. In 3 seasons, he's played in 48 games. He has 78 catches for 963 yards and 7 touchdowns. And 5 of his touchdowns came in his first season like with on the roster. He's practice squad guy in 2020, got hurt, didn't end up playing at all. But in 2021, so his second NFL season, 24 for 282 and 5 touchdowns. It's a really nice year, but he just hasn't been super productive, and I'm guessing that's where the hang-up is for the 49ers. Like, there's a lot of things that he does, but you need to find a big receiver who can block. I think that there's more of them available.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, the fact that his production or his value seems to outweigh his production, right? Like you saying that you thought he had 40 catches, I think sort of signals that like, yeah, okay, he's probably a better player than 19 catches for 200 and however many yards.
No doubt.
But here's the thing with Jennings. He's replacing Kendrick Bourne, who was a very similar player in terms of what he brought to the team as a third receiver. So the case for, dude, you're replaceable is you, because you were the dude who replaced a very similar type of player like previously from Kendrick Bourne. So the 49ers can continue cycling through number 3 receivers, not to mention the fact that they drafted a receiver 31st overall last month. Right. So Jennings, I think Jennings is just going to sign his tender, try really hard to play well. And then, if he does play well, it probably means he's going to be on another team next year. That's just how the business works. And it's going to be similar to Kendrick Bourne. In the next offseason, we'll be figuring out, hey, are the 49ers moving on from Deebo Samuel? Do they need to replace Samuel and Jennings? Do they need to only replace one of those guys? We'll see how that shakes out. But again, that's 12 months down the line. But I do think, speaking of receivers, I do think it's notable that Deebo Samuel is at OTAs and seems like he's in good shape, right? There are always like a handful of guys. Like for me, like I don't care what Trent Williams looks like in spring. We never see him in spring. I don't really care what Nick Bosa looks like in spring, but he's there, and we'll talk about the importance of that. I don't care what George Kittle looks like. I don't care what Christian McCaffrey looks like. But Deebo Samuel is a dude who in the spring, you're like, all right, I kind of care what this dude looks like, because there have been issues in the past where he hasn't been in great shape. Most notably before he was getting his contract in 2021, it wasn't in great shape. It's happened a couple different times in his career where he showed up in less than ideal shape, and it bled into the regular season in terms of production. And when he has been in awesome shape, that's why it matters. He's been one of the best players in the league, like full stop, right? Like 2021, or no, which year was it? 22?
He got his contract after 2021.
Yeah, so 2022, he wasn't in awesome shape, right? 2021, he was in awesome shape going into a contract year. He had an 1,800-yard season, was a complete war daddy, and one of the best players in the league, right? So, Deebo is one of those dudes where you're like, all right, he's there and he's in really good shape and he's flying around on the practice field. Like that to me is a really good sign. And from everything we've seen on X, formerly Twitter, Deebo is slimming down, is looking a little slimmer in the number 1 jersey, switching from 19. And
how
looks
much
like he's in good shape, which I think is really notable.
Is he in good shape, or is it the number change? I guess we'll never know.
Kyle Shanahan joked about it. I mean, it's, he is in good shape. And what Shanahan was saying was basically you have to be in good shape to wear number 1, because
it's a great point.
It'll be a number to where if you're out of shape and you're rocking number 1, like that's not.
It's very noticeable with the curvature of the 1.
Sure.
Like, you don't want your 1 to have a gradient.
Is that thing flat, or is the bottom of it sticking out a little bit?
You want that all vertical.
If I wore number 1. If I wore number 1, it wouldn't be the most flattering, I don't think, at the moment.
You wouldn't be able to tell on mine.
But no, I think Deebo, the 49ers have set this year up for Deebo Samuel to essentially be a contract year. Right? Like this is very similar to what 2021 was. Because Deebo, whether his future is with the 49ers or another team, this year is a really, really big one for Deebo. Because if Deebo Samuel has 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns with 4 coming on the ground and 8 coming through the air, and is just a really, really impactful player and balls out in the playoffs again. There's a good chance that he's either back with the 49ers or the 49ers are like, awesome, we're going to go trade this dude for 3 draft picks, including a first rounder. We're going to get off of that salary, and we're going to do what the Chiefs did with Tyreek Hill or what the Packers did with Devontae Adams. And it worked out for those teams. So like it makes sense, given that Brock Purdy is going to get a massive contract next offseason, to potentially trade Deebo Samuel if his value is really high. Deebo's motivation is going to be, all right, I need to get another contract because this is probably going to be his last real bite at the apple, given
definitely
his age, the injury history, the brand that he plays. So this is a really big year for Deebo and a big year for the 49ers when it comes to the thinking behind how they handle Deebo next offseason.
Yeah.
So in many ways, this is similar to what 2021 was for Deebo, when he had all the motivation in the world to ball out and have that 1,800-yard season and be one of the best guys in the league. Same motivation applies to this season from his personal perspective. And so the fact that he's at training camp right now and looks like he's in really good shape, I think is notable.
Can I offer an intangible aspect of this? Because I don't have a ton to add on what you said. When Deebo shows up in shape, he plays well. When he doesn't play well, and that's kind of how it's been during his career. I think there's an intangible element though of Deebo Samuel being there, and this also applies to Nick Bosa, who is in attendance, who we'll talk about in a second. But if Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel were both not there for OTAs, and Nick Bosa wasn't there for OTAs, and Trent Williams isn't there for OTAs, I think that feeds into the bad vibe take about the 49ers, where I listened to this is silly, but follow me. I listened to a fantasy football podcast where a couple of the hosts are just like, I'm out on the Niners because there's just the vibes that there's no way you bounce back from that. The vibes are just so bad. But when you've got Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, 2 of the best players on the team, pulling up for OTAs, pulling up in shape, participating, I think that sets a tone that, and maybe the Niners don't bounce back. Maybe they go 9-8 and none of this matters. But when you're going from the purely intangible of like, how's the vibe with that team? Those 2 guys being there at OTAs and being in good shape and participating is, I think, a pretty significant deal. Now, again, ultimately, that's not going to have an effect come week 15. But for now, when you're trying to assess where the 49ers are at, I think mentally, I think it's much easier to process it as, okay, they're in a good space to try and bounce back, versus if we're sitting there going, wow, so Ricky Pearsall right now is wide receiver 1 because their top 3 receivers aren't in camp. Nick Bosa is nowhere to be found. Trent Williams isn't there. It would just be like it would be kind of a mess, I think.
Yeah, and look, it's cliche, it's corny, but the reason why the 49ers are among the contending teams in the league year in and year out is because they have a lot of excellent players, all of whom are leaders in their respective position groups, and that's super apparent if you just watch them practice, right?
Yes.
Like if you watch the 49ers practice, you will see that Nick Bosa, when he's on the field and getting his reps in, he's practicing really, really hard. He doesn't need 40 reps a day at practice, but he's the type of dude that sets the tone with how hard he works in the off season, how hard he works at practice, how hard he lifts, how hard he studies film, and everything that he does in the building. And when you have your best guys there that are setting that standard, then somebody like Ricky Pearsall, who, if he's coming in and see, oh shit, like Deebo's in amazing shape and look how he's doing this, and I can talk to him about this route and this timing and all of that stuff is really, really valuable. Like in general, I don't really care about OTAs. It's more like who's there, who's injured, who isn't. In terms of like what happens on the field is like, oh, did Pearsall catch passes? Like, is he good or not? Like, whatever. We have plenty of time to figure that stuff out later. We're not going to make those value judgments based on OTAs. But in terms of the tone setters being there and participating in practice and setting the tone for the young guys that you're trying to develop to replicate or potentially replace these dudes down the line. Like having those tone setters is a really big deal. And Brock Purdy said it in his press conference today. He's like, man, if Bosa is here, it feels important, right?
Yep.
So I think that's where the value is in those guys showing up, because like this is voluntary. None of these dudes have to be here. And again, I don't care what Trent Williams looks like in May, right? Like I largely haven't cared what Nick Bosa looks like in May either. Like that, it's not a be all end all, like these dudes aren't here, things are bad situation. But when those dudes are there and they're in good shape and they're working their asses off, it is a tone set. It's impossible. Like if you're a rookie coming to the 49ers and you're like, oh, I have to, like Nick Bosa does a practice rep and then I have to go do the same rep. Are you not going to try really hard to put an awesome rep in front of your coaches and on tape?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that. That's just how this goes. So that's the important stuff when it comes to the veterans showing up to OTAs.
Big time. I wasn't that surprised that Debo was there. I was floored when I found out Nick Bosa was there.
Yeah, he normally doesn't go. He's normally just like, and you have to have a certain amount of equity.
Yeah,
right? Like
definitely.
You can't just be like, oh yeah, I started.
Demetrius Flanagan Fowles can't not show up.
Right. If you're on the roster bubble, you are showing up to this stuff.
Yeah.
If you're a certified star with, defensive player of the year trophy and the biggest contract for a defensive player in league history, like you don't necessarily have to show up. Your equity is already earned. But the fact that dude is there working tells the young guys like, yeah, this is what it's about. You got to work hard to get to where you're at.
Yep, definitely. You want to talk about Brock Purdy?
Yeah, so I think Brock Purdy being there healthy is notable. Like on the surface, you'd be like, yeah, the Niners starting quarterback being at OTAs is pretty standard operating procedure, right? But Brock Purdy, if you remember this time last year, was pretty fresh off elbow surgery and didn't participate in any of this. And it wasn't certain that he was going to be cleared for training camp when he was, and came in and had a really great game week 1 and had a really great regular season where he was in the MVP discussion basically until late December.
Yep.
Without getting any offseason reps. And one of the things that Kyle Shanahan said, and I believe it was in response to a question from our guy Nick Wagner, was like, he can talk about things, he can go over things in the meeting room with Purdy, and then they could do it on the practice field.
Yes.
And last year they didn't have any of that in the spring.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying like, okay, this is going to take Brock Purdy from the 12th ranked quarterback in the league to the 3rd.
No doubt.
I'm not saying that.
No doubt.
But I'm saying I think there's a very, like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Brock Purdy built on what he was last year and continued to improve, in part because he is healthy. He is able to work on all these things, including his chemistry with his receivers.
Yep.
And like, that's all part of it too. So if Brock Purdy had a big season this year, I wouldn't be surprised. And it would be his individual play improving as good as he was last year. It would be his individual play improving to the point where the conversation around him starts to shift to like, no, this dude isn't just a product of the system he's in and the pieces around him. He's actually playing at an extremely high level. And you only change the conversation when you do it for multiple seasons.
Right.
And that's where I think we get to with Brock Purdy this year.
So Brock Purdy's throwing coach, Will Hewlett, who worked with Purdy between the end of his college career and the draft, talked about how Purdy actually improved things like his release time and his arm strength during that few months between the draft and the college season ending in the draft. And he said that's part of the reason that teams overlooked him is because they didn't get to see these market improvements in these key areas. Not that he would have gone in the first round or anything, but that might have allowed him, had teams known that, to go in the 5th or 6th round instead of the last pick of the 7th. So anyways, I say that to say, the idea that Purdy could benefit from having a full offseason to work on being a quarterback. Not just in the 49ers building, but footwork, working with his receivers, his arm strength and again, it's not like there's not going to be a noticeable uptick in arm strength by our eyeballs, right? Like we're talking about fractions of seconds here in terms of like when the ball gets to the receiver. But like those kind of things matter. And the fact that he didn't get to work on being a quarterback at all in his first full NFL offseason is kind of nuts. And that he played as well as he did is pretty incredible. But I mean, we talked about it all the time. There were just, there were some ups and downs with the accuracy. There were definitely some not awesome decisions at times. And I think that just comes from A, experience, like just playing in games. B, getting an offseason to get better and stronger and more familiar with the offense and more familiar with the personnel around you. I think there's a legitimate chance that Brock Purdy is like noticeably better in 2024 because he set such a high bar in 2023, right? Or excuse me, 2022. The bar got set really high. And then last year, I think the elbow injury got pushed aside a little bit because of how well he was playing. Like it was a storyline all the way through. It's like, who's going to be the starting quarterback? Who's going to be the starting quarterback? And then he's out there for training camp and he gets through training camp and he gets through the preseason and he starts tearing it up in the regular season. And the elbow thing went by the wayside, but like, that still matters. It didn't matter on the field. It wasn't like he was hurt or they had to start Sam Darnold because of it. But the lack of the growth that he lost in the months between the end of the Super Bowl and the start of training camp mattered. But they didn't appear to based on how well he played. So I'm pretty excited to see what he looks like with a full offseason to not only work on his craft personally, but to also work with the 49ers coaching staff and with his teammates in a full offseason setting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this stuff, like it's going to help him improve on the margins potentially, right?
Yes.
Like this is not like, oh, he looks now Brock Purdy looks like Aaron Rodgers with the howitzer. Like that's not what this is going to be. Right. It's going to be like, hey, maybe on 3rd and 6 in the Super Bowl, instead of there being an incompletion, there's a check that, he's more comfortable making because he's been in the league longer and he can get Juwan Jennings to motion this way. And then that sets up this route where Jennings breaks free quicker because he knows pressure is coming from this angle, right? Like there are just all these little things that he could potentially get better at on the margins that only come from experience. And again, this is not just like, oh, he's at OTAs now, he's going to be amazing at this stuff. I just think he's going to be set up because now he's going to be in a much better position to get many more physical reps on the field instead of just like watching it all on film and then trying to do these mental reps in his head and then go do rehab for hours and hours. And that was another thing that Purdy mentioned in his press conference today, talking to reporters. He was like, I don't have to just like rehab all the time, spend all day rehabbing and then go to bed, wake up and rehab again. I can like have a social life with my teammates.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like, he's at the concert, tossing out beers with George Kittle the other night and like doing those things. And it's like, that's not going to like make Brock Purdy a better quarterback necessarily, but like, man, when you're able to actually interact with people and do fun things instead of just like grinding through rehab every single day just to get back, when you can like be a normal person, that is huge just from like a mental health perspective. I don't care if you're Brock Purdy or if you're, an electrician somewhere, like just something like that, like something like that, just like having improved mental health, improved like human interaction is like super important. Right. So
yeah, totally.
I think like, I just think there's a chance that we start to see Brock Purdy. Like he was really, really good last year statistically. And there was still, everyone's like, oh, it's, it's still kind of limited quarterback physically, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, man. I'm getting more optimistic about what Purdy could be. And a lot of that stems from, I thought he was really good in the Super Bowl. for the most part.
Yeah,
their
for
third
sure.
down issues were
Well,
more schematic than Purdy fucking up, right? So
sure. So let me. I want to piggyback off of what you're saying right here. You talk about the improvements that he's going to make are going to be on the margins, and like I said, from a visual standpoint, on a down in down out basis, you and I and everybody listening to this podcast are probably not going to notice. Oh man, he looks bigger. Oh, he looks stronger. Oh, his arm looks stronger. Oh, he looks faster. Like those are little things you're not gonna. You may think it, but it's going to be such a small fraction that you're not going to be able to really notice it. But can he be every game, to your point, 2 plays better? Are there 2 things he can do better each game? Because if he does 2 things better against the Browns, they probably win that game. If he does 2 or 3 things better against the Vikings, they probably win that game. I don't think there was any way they were winning the Bengals game. The 49ers defense couldn't get a stop. If he does 2 or 3 things better against Kansas City, they win that game. So that's when you say improving on the margins, that's what it means. There's a couple of plays per game, and I don't want to throw out a number because it's a handful of plays per game that separate like the great quarterbacks from the mediocre ones. And if he can improve to those 2, 3, 4 plays, whatever it is each game, where instead of punting, they've got a new set of downs, that could change a lot of things.
Yeah. And like, go back to, Steve Young and Mike Shanahan in the 1995 Super Bowl. It would have been
Kyle Shanahan's dad, Mike. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes. Mike Shanahan during the week, and Steve's talked about this a number of times, has went up to Steve and like, hey, let's go through all the plays, all the calls, all the reads. And they would do it. And then Steve would get it 100%, say every single play that they're going to run in the playbook, say where the reads are, where he's going to go if they get this look, et cetera, et cetera. And then Mike would be like, oh, do it again. Do it again. I know you got it right, but just do it again. And then after they did it 3 straight times or whatever, Mike told Steve, he's like, we're going to destroy him. And then, of course, Steve Young throws 1,700 touchdowns against the Chargers and the Niners win the Super Bowl. Point being, you only get to that point of mastering an offense through reps and experience.
Exactly.
And again, I'm not saying OTAs is the difference between having that experience or not, but what I'm saying is it doesn't hurt.
No, it highlights the theme.
Yeah. These are important reps for Brock. And if this does lead to being a play better or a couple plays better a week, then obviously that's really important for a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl. So I don't want to make too much of OTAs, but I do think it's pretty notable that Brock Purdy is healthy going through them for the first time as a 49ers starting quarterback, rather than, being the third string guy or not available at all because he's coming off elbow surgery. You remember, Brock Purdy didn't even start throwing until June last year.
Yeah. Crazy. He was just starting to throw this time last year. Wild.
Right. Yeah. He was a few weeks off. He was still so yeah, I think that's all positive.
And that's why today's unified healing moment is Brock Purdy. New super innovative global network. Unified is a new super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement Systems, or EE Systems. To learn more, visit unified.com/candlestick. That's unified, UNIFYD.com/candlestick. Christian McCaffrey also not in attendance. And that is interesting because while we can say, oh, Brandon Ayuk and Jawan Jennings aren't there because they are looking for new contracts. And then we can say, oh, Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa are there. They're setting a tone and being a good example, which is something that Christian McCaffrey always is. Maybe McCaffrey is taking the year off from OTAs because he's 28 now and doesn't think he needs them, or he's got his own workout routine that he's going out doing each day. But I think the question has to come up, is there a contract component to this?
So I hadn't really thought about this until I was watching Kyle Shanahan's press conference today, and one of the reporters asked him, is any of this contract related regarding Christian? And what Shanahan said was he's just kind of throwing this in the same bucket as all the other guys who aren't there. Just basically pointing out it's voluntary. And to be sure, McCaffrey is not one of those dudes that you're like, I need to see him at OTAs to know that he's going to be good this season. Like, he's definitely not that dude. But when you look at his contract, coming off a year where he had 2,000 scrimmage yards to lead the NFL, he led the NFL in scrimmage yards, touches, and he tied Raheem Mostert to lead the league with 21 touchdowns. And he did all that in 16 games, albeit like he missed the final game of the year, was it?
Mm-hmm.
He's making $12 million. He's making $12 million a year over the next 2. And crazy. I understand that he's a running back, and running backs are typically devalued and have a hard time getting contracts. But if you're Christian McCaffrey, are you looking at it like, man, I don't know that I necessarily deserve Tyreek Hill money, but if you look at his numbers compared to Tyreek Hill, who some people, including us, had in like the MVP conversation, like, and Tyreek Hill's making $30 million a year. If you're Christian McCaffrey making 12, are you like, I kind of want to raise, and I kind of maybe want another couple years because this is probably my last bite at the apple? That is kind of interesting. And that could be something. I haven't heard anything. I don't know. But that could be something where it's like, wait, Christian McCaffrey's not here at the start of training camp? Like, what's going on? And then it's like, oh, Christian McCaffrey's holding out for a new contract.
Yeah.
Like, that wouldn't be surprising. And it would be a very interesting situation because, like, you're Christian McCaffrey. And again, I understand running backs are devalued, and there's all sorts of data that shows you don't pay running backs / they don't matter. Meanwhile, the leaders in scrimmage yards, in the top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them were running backs. Maybe 6 of them were, Anyway, 5 or 6 of them were running backs. If you're Christian McCaffrey, would it be insane if you're just like, yeah, I'm coming off a 21 touchdown, 2,000-yard season, and I played in every damn game except for the one that we were resting after we clinched the 1 seed, and I won Offensive Player of the Year? Would it be absolutely insane for Christian McCaffrey to be like, I want $18 or $20 million for the next 2 years instead of 12?
No, I think in a vacuum as a running back, sure, given the market, but I think you can pretty easily pull up an article by Nick Wagner at ESPN.com and find the numbers of what the 49ers offense does when Christian McCaffrey is on the field and when he's not. I don't know for sure if Nick has written about this, but I'm just guessing. Anyways.
I know for certain that he has.
Okay, great. I thought it was in my brain, and then the more I started talking, the more I was like, I don't know if that's true. But anyways, it's stunning how much better the 49ers offense is when Christian McCaffrey is on the field than when he's off it. So that's why I don't think that like running backs aren't a monolith. It's not pay the running back or don't. It is your running back providing a service to your offense that not just any talented running back could provide? Or is it, hey, Christian McCaffrey is the focal point of everything San Francisco is doing offensively. He is the best pure runner they've had maybe ever. I don't know. I'm saying maybe. That's a hard caveat. If you think it's somebody else, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. But certainly under Kyle Shanahan, he's the best runner they've had. And he's definitely the best pass catcher they've had. And I mean, look at how many things open up in the passing game just by Christian McCaffrey floating out to the flat. How many? It feels like twice a game somebody does the all 22 cut up of like, hey, Kyle Juszczyk or Juwan Jennings was wide open here because the safety and 2 cornerbacks and a linebacker and a defensive end all followed Christian McCaffrey to the flat. So to me, I think if you're Christian McCaffrey, you're 100% asking for that kind of money. And if you're the 49ers, at this point, knowing what he means to your team, I don't know how you don't give it to him.
Yeah, and I do think the 49ers would be inclined to give it to him despite what the national sort of consensus conversation would be in that. Oh my God, that's so much money for running back. And like, look, people hated the Christian McCaffrey trade. I was skeptical about it too, mostly because of health concerns. Like, and it was clear to me that, at the time I was like, this is going to be a successful trade if he's a pass catcher for you. and he's been a pass
Yeah.
catcher for them. He caught 67 balls for 500 yards last year,
Mhm.
and he's making $12 million in addition to the 272 rushing attempts, 14 touchdowns, 1,459 rushing yards last year. Like,
Totally insane.
if you just want to compare him, so Tyreek Hill, I had his contract numbers up. Christian McCaffrey is 5.4% of the salary cap next year. Tyreek Hill is 12.26% of the salary cap with a $31 million cap hit. Right. And that's up on the screen right now for those of you watching on YouTube. Christian McCaffrey is 5.54, $14 million cap hit. I mean, Christian McCaffrey scored 7 more touchdowns, touched the ball almost 200 more times, and had 200 more yards than Tyreek Hill last year. And I totally understand the conversation of like devaluing running backs and you don't pay running backs, but there's an exception to every rule in the NFL.
1,000%.
Right? Like there are exceptions all over the place. And I think Christian McCaffrey is absolutely one of them. And if there's a guy that you're like, man, or if I'm McCaffrey, I'm like, hey, man, give me $40 million over the next 2 years. Like, bump me up from 24. Here are all my numbers compared to everyone else. Here's how valuable I am to you guys. Here's Nick Wagner's story on ESPN.com about what the offense looked like before I got there versus what it looks like with me here, and how I was statistically the best in-season addition in NFL history, and how important I've been to getting to the back-to-backs, or to getting to Super Bowls and carrying Brock Purdy. Like, I think we might be in for an interesting summer when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, and that hasn't been on really anybody's radar. So we'll see. And I think the 49ers would probably be inclined to pay him. But
I think so too.
I just think that, like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Christian McCaffrey is like none too thrilled about the idea of making $24 million over the next 2 years while being arguably the best skill position guy in the league right now.
So you say he's about $12 million a year for the next 2. I'm going to illustrate your argument another way. There are 26 wide receivers making more than $12 million a year right now. I'm going to name some of them. DeAndre Hopkins, who's 114 years old. Darnell Mooney, who is apparently a wide receiver in the NFL. Gabe Davis, who the Bills, who don't have any receivers, let him walk. They could have used him. Nope, making $13 million a year with the Jags. Tyler Lockett making 15. Cortland Sutton making 15. Jerry Jeudy, who got traded, making 17.5. Christian Kirk making 18. Deontay Johnson making 18.3. I don't think there's a single player there that anybody is taking over Christian McCaffrey. And I mean, you could probably say the same for a lot of the players above the Deontay Johnson tier. I cut it off at $20 million. But again, positional value does matter a little bit here. It's not in a vacuum. Players get paid based on their, like, the position matters at some point. So you don't want to get outrageous and start being like, yeah, $25 million a year for Christian McCaffrey, even though he might be quote unquote worth that. The positional market dictates that something like 18 or whatever would make him the highest paid running back. And I think that's what matters more than anything. Yeah.
And like, you cannot, one thing that's going to happen is I think a lot of the same people who said Brock Purdy was a product of his environment and completely carried by his skill position guys, those same people cannot say that Christian McCaffrey is not worth more than $12 million a year.
No. Right? Look, you know what's funny about this?
You can't be on both sides of that argument. you know what I mean?
That's right. The same people, I hadn't even thought about that. The same people who are like, yeah, actually Brock Purdy is not that good because of guys like Christian McCaffrey, are the same ones who wouldn't pay Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. And look,
that's great.
I get it. If I were a GM of the team, 99% of running backs, I would be like, yeah, kick rocks, dude. Like, go get paid somewhere else. I'm going to draft a dude in the 4th round every year and be fine. More likely than not, right? But this has been completely different. And since Christian McCaffrey came to the 49ers, like, it completely changed my viewpoint on this, because I was very much of the mind that, like, yeah, I'm not really into paying running backs because, they are so replaceable, and there's not really a whole lot of difference in talent between a dude you draft in the second round and a dude you draft in the sixth round.
Mm-hmm.
But with the way Christian McCaffrey catches the ball out of the backfield, the way he can just be extremely multiple and line up anywhere on the field, the way he runs the ball, like this is a Hall of Fame type player. And the proof is in the pudding. Like he's completely transformed the 49ers from a production standpoint. And he's basically been on the field for every single game. Like he hasn't missed any time. And the big question I had coming in when the 49ers got him was like, man, this guy has some injury history. You know what? He hasn't missed any time. And he's like, I know his body.
He missed week 18 last year. Just to be fair, he had a calf thing.
Okay, he had a calf thing.
Or a knee thing, whatever it was.
Sure. But it was an inconsequential game.
Yeah, he has not missed like significant time.
He hasn't missed a playoff game. He hasn't missed like an important regular season game. He hasn't missed any time. So from that standpoint, I understand it's a risk, but it's a risk I'm willing to take because this dude is somebody who is like Nick Bosa in that he's a sociopath, workout freak, football junkie type dude who all he wants is to win football games. So like I am willing, 99% of running backs, I'm telling no way am I giving you more money. But like Christian McCaffrey is like that rare dude who's proven it on the field, who's proven it just since he's been to the 49ers, really like since he's gotten there in every aspect, whether it's, leadership, locker room leadership, setting a tone, coming into shape every year. Like he's just that type of dude. And if I were him and I'm looking at like what I was last year and I'm 2,000 scrimmage yards, 21 touchdowns, 339 touches, and there are 26 receivers who are making more money than I am, and I was offensive player of the year, I'd be like, man, just give me $40 million over the next 2 years. I'm not asking for a 6-year contract. Just give me some more money.
Yep. Yeah. I think he's in his right to do that. And if that is why, and we should say with all this, we don't know for sure that it's contract related with Christian McCaffrey. He might be perfectly fine playing under his current contract for the next couple of years and figuring it out then.
But he just has a really compelling case to be like, no, guys, I'm not showing up till you give me more money. Yeah,
so definitely file that away in the event that training camp gets here and Christian McCaffrey is not there. But he might be.
Would you be surprised at all if like one of the national reporters at some point over the next couple of weeks sends out the tweet, Christian McCaffrey is unhappy with his contract and will not be reporting to 49ers until he gets a new deal? Like, what would your scale of 1 to 10, 10 being super surprised, 1 being not surprised at all?
Surprise level be? That it happened, like 1 that it makes all the sense that he would want a new deal. But on the other hand, I would be pretty surprised that it got to the media like that. McCaffrey seems like the kind of guy, like I think Ayuk has largely negotiated the same way. And again, we should also say, this is not like the players going, hey, I'm going to leak something to Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter. It's agents. Players are pretty separated from the process. At least from what I've understood. Ayuk's been mostly the same way. Like there hasn't been a lot of public negotiating from Ayuk's side. No. And I would be pretty shocked if we saw it from Christian McCaffrey. But if he wanted a new contract, not a surprise.
I could also see it like mandatory mini camp happens in second or third week of June, whenever it is. Christian McCaffrey's not there. All the reporters are out there on the practice field. Christian McCaffrey's not there. And then it comes out, league source says Christian McCaffrey is unhappy with his contract situation.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me at all.
That's probably the more likely scenario. Like Christian doesn't leak it, but then it becomes a story once he's not on the field for the mandatory session.
Yeah. I love the idea of any player who's not in an optional thing wants a new contract. That's a good bit.
I want to hold out for a new contract.
Yeah. That's why we're not at organized team activities. We're holding out. I don't think I have anything else on OTAs. Don't overreact to OTA stuff. That's my big takeaway.
Yeah,
We've already seen, dude.
injuries.
It's every year. Every year this happens, and I'm gonna go back to Odell Beckham Jr.'s first year in Cleveland, and it was OTAs, and it was him running like an out, and Baker Mayfield throwing a strike, and Beckham catching it, and people being like, Baker Mayfield to OBJ connection heating up, fire emoji, and posting that on Twitter, and we know how that worked out. So I see the Falcons posting a video of Kyle Pitts making a jumping catch. It's like, oh, Kyle Pitts, and Chase Claypool is making a jumping catch. It's like, oh, Chase Claypool found a home in Buffalo. Relax. It's not maybe, but we're not making any sweeping declarations off OTS.
Which year, and this is training camp, but I think the logic still applies here. Which year was it? Was it 2018, Richard Sherman's first year with the Niners, when our buddy Rob Louder's video went viral of Marquise Goodwin dusting Richard Sherman
it's 2018.
on a go route at practice during individual drills? And it was like, Sherman's washed, Marquise Goodwin
trash.
is great. Sherman goes on to be an all-pro in 2019, a year later, and a super crucial part.
To be clear, because I love Rob Louder to death. Subscribe to Striking Gold wherever you get your podcast.
It's not a Rob thing.
Right. I wanted to make that clear in case anybody thought we were taking shots. No, that Rob did not tweet Richard Sherman sucks now. Rob just put out a video. Rob just did a video and put it on the internet. Like, here's some practice video, and it got taken as Richard Sherman's washout. Right. That's anyways. I just wanted to make that abundantly clear.
I've sent out like training camp videos of like Jalen Hurd like doing the foot ladder in like warm-ups, and that thing like getting thousands and thousands of views. Like, oh, Jalen Hurd's here. It's like,
it's interesting. It's fun. Look, as a fan, it's fun because you don't get to view that kind of stuff. And if you're a fan, you're like, yeah, any anybody wearing a helmet, I want to see them doing stuff. Like, that's just that. That's a cool behind the scenes look. And but trying to make sweeping declarations off a couple of minutes or a 25-second practice video of receivers working on their get off at the line. I don't. I'm sorry. That's not. Wait till training camp. Wait till preseason. Then we can start
the regular season.
Yeah. The regular season work. Yeah, that also. Enjoy, have fun. Like, I don't want to yuck people's yums, but it's just we're not learning a lot right now. That's all.
No.
Enjoy it
when
though.
It comes OTAs,
consume all the content.
When it comes to OTAs, the important stuff is who's there, who isn't. If guys aren't there, are there reasons for them not being there beyond it just being voluntary, like we've talked about, and injuries, like who's
getting through it healthy.
Jake Brendel got some arthritis in his knee. We're monitoring the situation. We're keeping an eye out on Jake Brendel.
Yep.
Talanoa Hufanga on the sidelines, working back from the ACL tear. We'll see.
Drake Jackson on the sideline, working back from the off-season quad surgery.
Yeah, I haven't heard definitively what that injury is. But it doesn't sound great if it's still.
So Matt Mayoko wrote back in February that Drake Jackson had left quadriceps surgery. Jackson told him, quote, I'll be out there. And again, this is via NBC Sports Bay Area, Matt Mayoko, friend of the show. From Drake Jackson, quote, I'll be out there sometime this spring. I can't wait. I'm going to be ready for training camp for sure. So I'm not taking anything away from the fact that Drake Jackson wasn't fully healthy yet.
Fair enough.
Big offseason for him, though. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also,
he's got to have a good camp to make the team type offseason.
Yes. Travarius Ward, also going into a contract year, had core muscle surgery after the season, told Kay Adams on her show Up and Adams that he will be ready for training camp. He's close to 100% now, but he will be ready for camp. And he's trying to get that bag.
Aren't we all?
Dude, who among us?
Kyle Shanahan confirmed today that Isaac Guerrero plays running back.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, so that was
Oh my
That
God.
was
Okay, well, hang on. We should stop. We got to re-record the whole Christian McCaffrey thing because now my mind has changed.
Anyway,
Shout out to our guy Ike.
We got some interesting things coming down the pipeline on the old podcast feed. So subscribe wherever you got your podcasts, and obviously check us out on YouTube at the Candlestick Chronicles Podcast. Search it on YouTube, we'll pop up there. Starting to cut up some more videos. It won't just be full episodes on the channel. So you will see some smaller bites here and there this off season, and we're diving more into video as we go. We understand we're a little late to the process, but when you have full-time jobs, it's a little bit difficult
it's tough
to go headlong into the video space on top of recording a podcast. So we appreciate everyone's patience with that and their support. Of course, subscribe, rate, and review, like button, notification bell, all those fun things help us out a ton, and we'll talk to you later.